I was sitting in my favorite cafe, stirring my tea, when my daughter Natalie suddenly said, "Dad, I believe you're still in good shape. That woman over there hasn't taken her eyes off you since we walked in." Since I had been a widower for almost 2 years, Natalie really wanted me to start dating again. At 52, after 25 years of happy marriage to my late wife Jane, I wasn't ready for that. To be honest, I doubted I ever would be. I knew I was still relatively young, at least for a grandfather. I still had all my hair and teeth. I was almost as fit as I was at 18. I just couldn't imagine being with anyone other than Jane. It would have been unfair and wrong to her. Silly, I know, but that's how I felt. Natalie nudged me to look, and I handed her my little grandson, Noah. I glanced over, but immediately turned away in shock. "Dad, what's wrong? You're as white as a sheet." "Natalie, that woman isn't looking at me because she likes me. Believe me, she's looking at me because I was married to her." Natalie laughed at first. "That's very funny, Dad. You were only married to Mom. You always said she was the love of your life. Your other half." She was. She was my other half. But she wasn't my first love. That was the first Mrs. Michael Barnes, Mrs. Julie Barnes to be exact. It was a mistake. My biggest mistake. Natalie looked stunned. "How could I not have known?" "It was long before you came along, sweetheart. I was even younger than you are now. I have a past, you know. By the way, your mother had a past, too. We had no secrets from each other, but parents have a right to have secrets from their children." "What secrets did Mom have? Was she married before, or was she an international assassin?" "Well, your mother's secrets were hers, dear. But she would have been the first to say they weren't as interesting as mine. They certainly didn't include being married to someone else. However, if she had decided to become an international assassin, I'm sure she would have been damn good at it if she'd put her mind to it." "It's like I'm looking at a stranger, a mysterious man who talks like my dad and wears his jacket." Natalie laughed. "Honey, you know me better than anyone on this planet now that your mom's gone. Tell me, Dad. Tell me about this Mrs. Julie Barnes." And I told my daughter the story of my first love. I left out some of the details. I glossed over some of the dirtier aspects of my early sex life. Fathers don't like to talk about those things with their daughters. Even if their daughters are 23 years old, married, and have children of their own. If I want to believe that Noah was conceived immaculately, and that my wonderful son-in-law Jackson always sleeps in the guest room at their house, that's my right. However, I will tell you the whole story as I remember it. I met Julie when I was 19 and she was 18. We were both pretty innocent, really. I believed that the pinnacle of my sexual education was reading a few worn copies of a teen magazine called Fiesta that my friend Alan stole from his father's shed. Not like today when all that knowledge is so accessible thanks to online videos. Not that I believe it gives an accurate picture, of course, but kids have a better understanding of what to do and how. Despite our innocence, Julie and I took each other's virginity. Despite our lack of knowledge, we soon discovered that we were pretty good at it. Julie was very orgasmic, and that gave me confidence. Soon, we wanted to experiment too. All those letters from readers at the back of Fiesta magazine gave me some ideas. We were really special together. I barely had to touch her, and she would explode like a rocket. She was very loud. When we first moved into our little one-room apartment, an elderly neighbor said we'd have to find a new home for our barking dog. Didn't we know pets weren't allowed? We laughed until we cried. But for us, it wasn't just about sex. She was everything to me. I thought about her all the time. I just wanted to make her happy. Looking back, we were so young, married at 21 and 20, just kids. But we had to be together. We hated being apart. After my parents died, I was raised by my grandmother. It took her a while to love Julie, but in the end, she accepted her as the granddaughter she never had. We had a large circle of friends and still went out a lot. However, we were happy when we were alone together. Everyone teased us. young, and in love. I realized that we were probably quite clingy at times, but we couldn't help ourselves. Julie was very jealous of me. She is terribly jealous. It was silly, but I guess it was just her youth showing. She would sulk if any girl even glanced in my direction. I was a handsome young man back then, and I thought it was cute that she was jealous. That was my youth showing. I guess that little bit of insecurity made me even more confident. Confident in her love for me. How foolish I was to enjoy her jealousy. I guess the fact that I never gave her a reason to be jealous was enough. I was wrong. The problem arose when Julie turned 21. At that point, we had been married for about 10 months. I had been saving money to take her on vacation to Tenerife. We couldn't afford a honeymoon abroad, and I felt a little guilty about that. I worked overtime to save up the money. I wanted us to spend 2 weeks completely relaxing and living it up. At the time, I was working in a shop, so it was easy for me to take extra shifts. Luckily, we both had passports. Julie got hers when she went to France with her parents, and I got mine when I went to Holland for a course. My main problem was getting Julie to take time off work without her finding out. She worked as an administrator at a local real estate agency. It was a branch of a much larger chain. Her boss was Jerry. He was in his 40s and divorced for the second time. Julie told me that he flirted terribly with single clients and even with some married ones. I could see that he liked himself. He was a good-looking middle-aged man, but not as impressive as he thought he was. I asked Julie if he had ever tried to hit on her, and she laughed and said, "Jerry flirts with anyone in a skirt, from 18 to 80. He's not picky. If he flirted with me, it wouldn't be very flattering, would it?" "Probably not," I replied. "He can't help himself. That's just the way he is. It's like an obsession, but we have an agreement. He leaves me alone, and I don't punch him in the groin or report him to the boss. After all, he's older than my father, the dirty devil. If you know how to handle him, he's easy to work with." Looking back, I realize I should have been concerned. But I was a cocky young man. Didn't I make her happy morning and night, as they say? Besides giving her pleasure, we loved each other, and I trusted her completely. So even though Jerry was a little dirty, and definitely not the kind of guy I wanted to be friends with, I needed to ask him for a favor. One evening, while I was waiting for Julie, I managed to corner him. I told him about the surprise for Julie and said I was going away for a few months, but I really needed to know if he could fill in for me so I could book the tickets. He said not to worry, and that he looked forward to seeing our vacation photos. I thanked him and made a mental note not to take too many pictures of Julie in her bikini. So everything was booked. I told Julie that I was working a few extra shifts to save up for a down payment on our own house. We did that, but the extra money was for her special surprise. In fact, the vacation in Tenerife was cheaper than I had planned, so I decided to spend the extra money on a small party for her. I told Julie that on her birthday we would spend the night in a fancy hotel. She didn't know that our friends and relatives would be waiting for her at a pub across the street to surprise her. I would have liked to throw a party at the hotel, but we didn't have enough money for that. The next morning after breakfast, we had to check out of the hotel and go straight to the airport. I had met her best friend Claire and my mother-in-law Pam many times. I loved Pam and her husband Dave very much. I didn't have parents, and I was very happy when they started calling me their son. It was Pam and Claire who pointed out to me that Julie would need a new wardrobe for her 2-week stay abroad. I tried to convince them to take care of it. However, Pam could be quite strict, and I had to endure several nightmarish shopping trips. I hated every second of it, but it was worth it to see Julie's face. The plan was for Julie's mom to pack her suitcase and drop it off at the hotel. She was supposed to stop by our place before the party to pick up all the jewelry, toiletries, underwear, and accessories she thought Julie might need for 2 weeks. I told Julie to bring a bag with a change of clothes to work so we could go straight to the hotel after work. I bought her a new dress for the occasion. I booked a table at the hotel restaurant, a pretty fancy place, as a birthday present. I planned to take her to a pub after dinner, so after months of stress and secrecy, I was ready to spring my big surprise. It turned out that Julie had an even bigger surprise in store for me. Although not as big as the one Julie's mother got when she caught Jerry with her beautiful daughter. Hearing Julie's screams, she believed that Jerry was raping her little girl. How could she know that her daughter was screaming like that in the heat of passion? Pam was a large woman. Jerry was shocked when she lunged at him. Apparently, he fell off the bed when she approached him and hit his head. This gave Pam time to call the police and report the rape and that the rapist was unconscious. What else could Pam believe? She couldn't believe that her daughter had willingly gone with that old man. He was older than her. Of course, I knew nothing about it. When I arrived to pick her up, I was very upset. I was surprised to see that the real estate agency was locked and blocked. In those days, in the early 90s, I didn't have a cell phone, and neither did Julie. They were rare. In fact, the only person I knew was that bastard Jerry, and that was only for business and bragging rights. I had no idea how to find her. In the end, I drove to our apartment. When I saw the police cars, my heart stopped. They wouldn't even let me into the building. A female police officer was on duty that day. I don't remember her rank, but I'll never forget her kindness. She looked like a stern old woman, but she gently told me what had happened. They had been called to the scene of a rape, where they found a man unconscious and a mother and daughter in shock. They soon established that Julie had been a willing participant. They were still trying to establish poor Pam's role in Jerry's injuries. Of course, at first I didn't believe her. Not my Julie. We were happy, really happy. We were supposed to go on vacation tomorrow. We were supposed to go on vacation. I must have been in shock. She applied the old British remedy for shock. Strong tea with 2 sugars, brought by a kind, if curious, neighbor. She told me Julie was with her father, Dave. Poor Pam was still helping the police with their investigation at the station. God only knows what my father-in-law thought of it all. The police took me to a hotel. I wasn't allowed to drive. I had nowhere to go. My grandmother had moved into a small apartment under the care of a caretaker. I couldn't stay with her. The police were wonderful. They even went to the pub and told them I had asked them to host a party. Everything was paid for. The owner said he would just announce that the girl who was supposed to have the party and her husband had to leave, but that everyone could eat, drink, and be merry. Sitting on the edge of the bed and staring into space, I doubted that I would ever be happy again. I was 22 years old and my life was over. I was a stupid boy, but that's how I felt at the time. I loved her so much. I trusted her. I trusted her. What did I do wrong? She seemed happy. She seemed satisfied with me. Why did she do that? She knew what he was like. Why? That night I fell asleep in tears. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I could hear the disco across the street. I'm sure everyone was talking about my story. My last thought before I finally fell asleep was that the DJ had done a good job. He played all of Julie's favorite songs. She would have loved it. It took a couple of weeks before I got the answer to my question of why Julie decided to break my heart. In the meantime, I did what any reasonable person in my situation would have done. I went on vacation with Mrs. Barnes. No, not that Mrs. Barnes. I took the Mrs. Barnes who still loved me and who I knew would never let me down. At 22, I took my 82-year-old grandmother to Tenerife for 2 weeks. We had a really wonderful time. My grandmother was a force of nature. She was a wise old lady. Of course, she had lived through 2 world wars. Although she always emphasized that she was just a little girl during the first one. She had a long marriage, then she was widowed, and then she lost her only son and started all over again, raising his child. She had seen everything in her life. Over many blue cocktails, they were her favorite, she gave me advice that was far better than any therapist could have given me. She asked me a lot of questions but never expressed her opinion. It all came down to how I felt about things. Can you forgive her? Can you live with her after what she did? Can you live without her? Will your life be better or worse without her despite what she did? She let me make the decision for myself. I loved Julie, but it wasn't enough. There was no reason, No excuse that could matter to me. I still wanted to know why, but it was more to close the chapter, as they say now. I decided that I was still young, very young, and that I deserved better. That was my decision. My final decision. My grandmother looked at me and said, "Thank God. That little slut will regret the day she hurt my boy. Mark my words. Now take me to the pool bar. Bingo is about to start." I lost my grandmother just a year later. I'm so glad I got to spend that time with her. She made me laugh at a time in my life when I'm sure no one else could have. So, after 2 weeks in the sun, I returned home ready to divorce Mrs. Barnes and get some answers. After telling my grandmother, I headed to the apartment. I tried to sneak in but noticed that the neighbors were peeking through the curtains. The apartment was empty and cold, and there was still blood on the bedroom floor. Dirty sheets lay on the bed. Julie had obviously stayed with her parents. I just closed the door. It looked like I would have to sleep on the couch until I figured everything out. I knew I couldn't sleep in that bed anymore. I was disappointed, devastated. I was ready to have a serious talk with Julie. I wanted to tell her that I believed in her. I had rehearsed it in my head for 2 weeks. I decided to go to her father's garage to see if he was there. He was working on his car when he noticed me. He took me into his small, dirty office, which was cluttered with bills. He made me a cup of tea, with 2 sugar cubes, I noticed, and told me exactly what had happened. Jerry, that sleazy opportunist, had seen an opportunity to seduce Julie, as her father put it mildly. He was so embarrassed to tell me about it, but he bravely continued. Knowing that I was working overtime and knowing why, Jerry convinced Julie that I was cheating on her with some slut. "I know what young men are like, Julie." Such a handsome guy, you can't expect him to control himself. He was a manipulative bastard. After all, he was a salesman. He knew which buttons to push. "I can't believe he did that to you, Julie. If I had a beauty like you, I would never cheat. You need a mature man who appreciates you, not some boy who doesn't deserve you." He worked on her jealousy, which he knew she felt. He worked on her for weeks, eventually planting the idea of revenge sex in her head. Her father said she resisted him for weeks, but when he showed her the photos, she gave in. "Photos?" I asked. "What photos?" "Photos of you and Claire." "There are no photos of me and Claire. There's nothing between me and Claire." "I know, son, believe me, I know. Jerry hired one of the photographers from the real estate agency. His name is Clive, to take pictures of you and Claire when you were planning the party. There's a particularly compromising photo of you two entering the hotel together." I started to protest, but Dave continued. "I know it was all innocent. I'm just sorting through everything, and I know you were there for quite a while that day because you were looking at the ballroom, but it was too expensive to have a party there. There were photos of you and Claire shopping, drinking in a pub. Of course, all the photos were carefully cropped so you couldn't see that Pam was always there too. He couldn't have fooled her if she saw that it was her own mother there, right?" I must have looked stunned. Jerry really wanted to get into Julie's pants. "All of that, son, combined with the fact that she knew you were hiding something from her. Too often you hung up when she walked into the room. All those extra shifts, but no extra money going into the savings account. All of that made her believe the lies that bastard fed her when he said you were up to no good. I'm not making excuses for her, son. Not at all. I'm completely ashamed of her. And after what she did to you, to me, and to her mother, I could have disowned her completely. But she's still my daughter, and I understand how she was manipulated." There was a silence that seemed like an eternity before I could speak. "So he admitted everything?" "Well, son, the thing is, he was forced to do it as part of a police investigation. You see, at first they weren't sure that Pam had attacked him. If he hadn't fallen, I'm sure she would have done it. She's desperate. Her heart is broken because of both of you, but she can't get the image of them together out of her head. I'm just glad you didn't have to see that. The doctor put her on medication. I'll never forgive our Julie for this. Never. But I can't turn my back on her." I understood that. I understand it even more now that I'm a father myself. The first night, I told Julie everything about the party and the vacation. I told her something else, that she had embarrassed herself, and what a wonderful young man you were. She was horrified by it all, terrified by what she had done, by what had happened to her mother, but I couldn't convince her that you hadn't cheated on her. Jerry really worked on her. Her mother convinced her that you had always been with her and Claire. Clive probably felt guilty too because he called to apologize. He said he believed it was all part of some elaborate joke. I didn't believe that for a second. Jerry obviously paid him, and although it hurts me as a father to admit it, I think he believed that once Jerry got Julie, he'd get a piece of the pie too. He couldn't look at me. He just stared ahead. Is Julie still with you? No, son. I was getting to that. She's in jail, under arrest. Just when I thought all the shocking surprises were over, there was another one. When she finally realized that Jerry had lied to her, manipulated her, seduced her with his false promises, realized she had lost you, she stabbed him. She killed him. No, he survived. He was recently released from the hospital after that fight with her mother. Even though he was weak, he survived. She did it on purpose, son. She took a knife to hurt him. They say it's attempted murder. She's looking at 20 years, son. At that moment, my father-in-law broke down in tears. Julie had certainly shed many tears over her. I actually went to see her once before the trial, just to say goodbye. I wanted to know why, and I already knew the answer. I just couldn't understand how she could think that about me. Why did she believe the words of that scumbag, and not her own husband? When she stopped crying, she told me pretty much the same thing her father had said. The whole sad story was interspersed with, "I'm sorry," and how much she loved me. But it was too late for that, wasn't it? One thing I learned that seemed important to Julie was that it was the first and last time she had slept with him, that she had given in. She admitted she did it out of revenge, in our bed, to punish me. Jerry said it was the best revenge, that I took her to the hotel out of guilt. That night, she planned to tell me that she knew about my affair with Claire and her revenge with Jerry. You planned to tell me how much you enjoyed it? According to your mother, you really got into character. It wasn't like that, really. Even at the last minute, I almost backed out. I knew it would make me as bad as I believed you were, but Jerry had already gotten into my soul, although a voice of doubt was still ringing in my head. "Oh, Julie," I said, getting up to leave, "if only you had listened to that little voice of doubt. If only." "My God, Dad," Natalie said, hearing the short version of the story. "How long did she get?" "Well, she served 15 years. Actually, it should have been more because she planned it all, you know? She took a knife to do the deed. She behaved well in prison and got out early. You were 8 years old at the time, and your mother and I had been married for 12 years. I had such a good life with your mother's love and support. I was so humiliated by the court and the publicity. I was completely humiliated. Everyone knew and seemed to be talking about it, talking about us, talking about me." I paused and smiled reassuringly at my daughter. "I really should go and thank Julie, although at the time I was devastated. If Julie hadn't done what she did, I would never have met your mother. I would never have experienced all this happiness. And most importantly, you and little Noah wouldn't be here. I am very grateful to her." When I looked over, Julie was long gone. Even the edited version I told Natalie was probably too long. Right after the trial, my grandmother died, and I used the money she left me to move away and start a new life. That's when I met my beautiful Jane. I have to tell her story. All these words have been wasted on Julie. I have to write about Jane. She deserves every word. Natalie looked at me. "Don't be angry, Dad. I hate what she did to you and how badly she hurt you, but I still feel a little sorry for Julie. She lost you. That's a big loss for anyone. She was manipulated, practically set up by a terrible person, and she was still almost a child." "I understand what you're saying, Nat. I really do." You're looking at it through the eyes of a modern person. We're talking about 30 years ago. Back then, predators got away with it. Believe me. Unfortunately, the court did not consider her a victim. The truth is that despite her young age, she was not a child, but a married woman with a loving husband. She was all he had. As a young man with a broken heart, I didn't feel much sympathy for her either. She broke my heart. I wanted her to be punished. I wanted her to hurt. Despite that, even I believed she was treated too harshly, but she was guilty. She may have been a victim of Jerry's manipulation, but she made him her victim when she went after him. Two wrongs don't make a right, and that's the whole point of this story. If she really believed I was cheating on her, why did she think the same thing would help her? She didn't trust me, and that was the most important thing. She didn't believe in my love for her. We were young, and she should have trusted me. What happened to Jerry? Apart from a few injuries, he seems to have gotten off easy. That's not fair. He didn't get away scot-free. His reputation was ruined. He was publicly condemned in the press, usually alongside photos of the young happy couple on their wedding day, which he had ruined. After that, he had a run of bad luck. He was fired from his real estate agency for bringing shame on the company. It turns out that not all publicity is good publicity. Things got even worse for him when he was attacked again. This time by someone unknown. They never found out who it was. Let's just say that after that attack, he couldn't sleep with women anymore. Let's leave it at that. This happened about a year after Julie's trial. I know it wasn't you, Dad, but I believe you know who it could have been. No, I don't know for sure, but I have a theory. I know that Julie's father was devastated by what happened. Pam was never the same again. She went from being a strong, funny woman to a shadow of her former self. He was bitter about that, and about his daughter's ruined life. I also believed that he had a lot of tools in his garage that could cause serious damage. I'm glad it was Dave. I'm even more glad that whoever it was got away with it. In the end, they left too. We didn't keep in touch. Why would we? I hope they found peace. A few days later, Julie approached Natalie as she was feeding the ducks with Noah. I don't know if you know who I am? I do. Dad told me everything the other day when he saw you. To be honest, it was a shock. He never told me about it before. He's been looking for you since that incident. He wanted to thank you. Thank me? Julie asked. Yes, for letting him go so he could meet my mom. He loved her very much. Well, then she was the happiest woman alive. She had him and you. She smiled at Noah. I'm so sorry she didn't get to see this little guy. He's adorable. Thank you. I'm really sad, but I believe she's still around. I'm sure she is. I really believe that. She paused to break the bread Natalie had passed her. I was so stupid back then. So stupid. Please tell your father I'm sorry if my appearance upset him. I didn't mean to disturb him. I just dropped in to see some friends. I think I was as shocked as he was when I saw him. He's still so handsome. Please tell him I still love him, always have and always will. Tell him to be happy. I'm sure both his wives would want that for him. We haven't seen Julie since. If you believed that at 50 we would have a grand reconciliation, you were wrong. For now, I am content with my memories of my beautiful Jane. Maybe in time, I'll be able to open my heart again. For now, I'll love my daughter, my grandson, and yes, even my son-in-law, but don't tell anyone. No, going back to Julie will never be an option for me. As my dear old mother Nan would say, I don't cook cabbage twice.